Serapis Bey in this embodiment was regarded as the greatest ruler on earth. He maintained a high level of peaceful diplomatic relations with all nations during most of his reign of 36 years. Part of the great wealth of his treasury was spent on the construction of magnificent temples and palaces. He enlarged the existing temple of Karnak on the Nile, and he built a huge funerary temple, the remains of which are known today as the Colossi, the monolithic seated statues uncovered on the banks of the river. These very large statues depicted personages. There are only 3 remaining, but the remains reveal that there was there the outpicturing in stone of the understanding of Serapis Bey, of the Word incarnate in the hierarchical order of initiates, of ascended masters, of rulers of golden ages, of philosopher kings, if you will, of those who embodied God and who had walked the earth in the earlier golden ages before the fall of the archangel and his angels on Lemuria. The first 3 root races had not fallen, had not descended. They lived in 3 golden ages, unparalleled, which we have not even the slightest comprehension of. Such civilizations today exist only on the etheric plane. When you think of it, all of those embodied on earth in those 3 root races graduated and made their ascension in the light. They all returned to the flaming one and have since become cosmic beings. And so these remaining statues brought forth in his reign, or which were there at that time, remind us that on Atlantis and Lemuria, they still remembered the golden ages. And we even remember the golden ages, the faint dream within our hearts, the very daring to dream that life can be better, the very goal of perfection that we pursue, even though we know not how to pursue it. All of us dream of a more perfect world because a more perfect world really does exist. We've somehow lost the thread of contact, and the ascended masters have come in this conclusion of Pisces and the dawn of Aquarius to tell us what is that thread of contact to our own I am presence. With all of this outpicturing from his heart flame in 36 years, the 3 times 12, the greatest construction was that of the Temple of Luxor, which remains partially intact today. This temple embodied in its geometry and design the physical outpicturing of the esoteric law that had been passed down through the priesthood for generations. It stands today as a thorough textbook of advanced science, art, and philosophy. The Temple of Luxor is the physical counterpart today of the Ascension Retreat. The Ascension Retreat of the Great White Brotherhood, where Serapis Bey is on the etheric plane. All of these retreats of the Brotherhood were removed from the physical and withdrawn to the etheric octave because of hordes and war and destruction and the defiling of those temples. So the Ascended Masters teach us in their very early lessons that when we go to sleep at night, we make the call to the I Am Presence and the Christ Self, to the guardian angels, to Archangel Michael, to take us to the retreat where we would study in the teachings of the law. Serapis Bey invites us to that retreat of the Great White Brotherhood, and there he teaches us the path. The dossier on the Ascension is given to us in the physical as a physical textbook, and he says that that entire textbook is taken from the classes that he conducts at the Ascension Temple. So here you can have anchored into your conscious mind through that book what you learn when you are out of the body while you sleep at night. Now, the most wonderful thing about the soul's journeys to the retreats of the Great White Brotherhood is that the soul, in its innocence and in its freedom, can learn far more of the great mysteries of the Christ than the outer mind dare accept, because the outer mind is programmed to such an entrenched doctrine and dogma that denies the incarnation of the Word in every child of God. So that the hearing of these mysteries and the hearing of Serapis Bey becomes such a conflict to the outer mind that it cannot begin upon the path of those simple truths where Jesus Christ himself began. But when the guardian angels come and take our souls and we journey on the etheric plane to the etheric retreats, we are free of that programming of our embodiment, and we take up the thread of the soul's journey on its pilgrimage to the homeward source. And so often when people pick up the books of the Ascended Masters and they read them, it is like coming home, because everything they read, they instantly know is truth, because they have already been God taught in the inner retreats. One of the purposes of this retreat on the Ascension is to connect you with your soul's inner experiences. So often we have flashes and memories and glimpses and feelings, and we know there is more to life, and we know that we ourselves know more about life, but we can't quite get to that compartment of consciousness where it all is. We know that our conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg. We know there's a vast experience that we have experienced if only we could contact it. If only we could remember where we were in the recent embodiment or on Atlantis and what we have known through all of our experiences upon Earth. Well, this is what Serapis Bey teaches. And this temple at Luxor, which is there today in the physical, and you can visit it, has its counterpart on the etheric plane. What is the etheric plane? Maybe you've heard of your etheric double. The etheric plane is simply the counterpart of you and your life and your consciousness in another frequency of matter. It's not heaven, it's still in the earth plane, but it is at another frequency. It's like the spectrum of sound. We only hear so much sound, we only see so much color, we only have certain radio frequencies, and then it stops. That's the spectrum of physical experience. Beyond it, there are waves and vibrations, the etheric plane. It's where people go when they pass from the screen of life, when they don't again return to the physical body. You have an etheric body that is just as real as your physical body. In fact, it is more real. It is congruent with your physical body when you are waking and working. And with the saints who experience bilocation, they can be in many places at once through that etheric body. At night, it becomes the envelope or the sheath of the soul. It's the body in which you travel. And so to Luxor we go, especially during this retreat when Serapis Bey is welcoming new students on the path and old students who are accelerating. But look at what he knew when he was embodied as Amenhotep III. This temple is overshadowed only by the Great Pyramid in its grandeur of conception. It displays the idea of the birth of the divine man based on the transformation of the universal mother principle. Every proportion, angle, carving, and hieroglyph were a means to the end of enshrining the process of the ascension of man into the immortal realms. The outline of the human skeletal framework, traced according to the anthropometrical methods and precisely proportioned, form the general plan of the temple. The courtyards and rooms of the temple closely correspond to the body organs and physical symmetry. A person by the name of de Lubitsch spent 15 years studying its architecture. His conclusion is, quote, "The Temple of Luxor is indisputably devoted to the human microcosm. This consecration is not merely a simple attribution. The entire temple becomes a book explaining the secret functions of the organs and nerve centers." The Egyptians considered the organs of the human body to be images of the divine universal organism. In other words, they understood the principle of man, the microcosm, the little universe, against the backdrop of man, the macrocosm, the big universe. And they understood the stars and the galaxies corresponding to atoms and molecules and organs in the body temple. And they understood that the path of life was the fusion of this self within this temple with the larger self within the greater temple. And there Serapis Bey enshrined this conception. De Lubitsch remarks, quote, that the Temple of Luxor could be called a Parthenon based on its fundamental kinship with the Parthenon of Athens. It is, in fact, the true Parthenon, that is to say, the temple devoted to the spiritual conception of man.